genuine gratitude, real stuff. Check gratitude at every point of that checklist. Check gratitude everywhere you go, because it is by far and away the strongest brand strategy that there is, period. I don't care what business you're in.
Welcome to the Head Smack Podcast, where we have candid conversations with misfits and mavericks, those not afraid to stand up and stand out, the dreamers and the doers, the ones who've stumbled, fumbled, and then soared. Here we delve into the inspiring journeys and pivotal aha moments that have shaped their worlds. And maybe through sharing their adventures, you'll get hit with a head smack that'll change your destiny. Hey, welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. My name is Povolni, and I am excited to have another misfit with me. I have Brandon Coleman Jr., a visionary entrepreneur and branding expert. He's got 5 decades of successfully amplifying potential, a noted speaker, author, and Mays Business School outstanding alumnus. He inspires candor and creativity. Welcome, Brandon. Glad to have you on, man.
Hey, thanks a lot, Paul. I'm honored to be here, brother.
Looking forward to this conversation and looking forward to hearing about your upcoming book, but also hearing about some of your adventure. And so I want to hear about the origin story of Brandon Coleman. Tell me a little bit about how you got into branding, but also kind of what led into that journey of helping people out.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm going to try to be brief when talking about myself. My father was a basketball coach, Hall of Fame basketball coach in Texas, and a teaching tennis pro. So I had a jockstrap on at 3 years old and literally played sports, 8 hours a day for many years. Went on a college scholarship to Texas A&M University to play tennis, and ended up leaving the tennis team my freshman year because I turned around and said, "Ooh, Dad's not here kicking my ass." So I said, I want to be something else. I'm tired of being a jock. And I was one of the top tennis players in the state of Texas, and said, I just want to do something else. So after leaving the team, I went back to my dorm, and I'm watching TV. And back in the 70s, there were like 3 or 4 key shows you didn't miss. Leave It to Beaver, Beverly Hillbillies, and Bewitched. Gilligan's Island was one of them too, but Bewitched was the one that really caught my eye. I watched all 4 of them.
Right.
But in Bewitched, Darren Stevens worked for an ad agency. That was the husband of the witch who could wiggle her nose and do anything. I've yet to find a wife that can do that, but somehow was still successful in the world of marketing. Yes. So I go to my English professor one day after leaving the tennis team, and I said, "Hey, do you know what that is called, Darren Stevens does?" Because I literally, in my family, I had zero business background. I didn't know what a business was other than seeing stores and things like that. I really didn't have any clue. And I said, what does Darren Stevens do? She said, well, that's called an advertising agency. He makes presentations and shows ideas and helps people with their business. I said, I can do that. She said, oh, really? I said, yeah. I said, so what do I need to major in? She said, well, historically, people in the past have been all journalism. But she said, there's a new way of thinking. And that is that marketing has an upper hand because it's business driven. And what you're really working on when you're working on advertising campaigns and things that sway people is you're actually working on business metrics and alignments that make sure the business side of the deal is proper before you start launching and telling it to the world. And so I think there's a real advantage in a degree in marketing in the business school. So go talk to the dean of journalism and the dean of business. I talked to both. I chose business. Walked in my first marketing class my junior year, and the marketing professor looked to be about 100 and something years old. And I thought, oh God, here's one of these old profs going to roll right over his butt. No big deal. I walk in and he's taking roll, and he looks at me and he goes, "Brand on." And truthfully, Paul, branding was not even a word in those days. Yeah, they used it on Madison Avenue for a package product, but there was no brand strategy, brand this, brand that. And he goes, "Brand on." And I said, "Yes, sir, I'm here." He said, Good to meet you. That was it. Wow. On his first essay test, he did all essay tests. It was in spring, and the girls' dresses were short and the fish were running, so I didn't study real hard that semester. And the first essay test I took his, I thought, well, I'll schmooze this old guy. This will be a cakewalk. And I wrote on there, and I picked it up 3 days later, and it had F. Said, "Coleman, if you think you're going to BS your way through my class, you're wrong."
Oh, wow.
He became a lifelong mentor for 50 years, a dear friend, and I ended up being asked by his family to give his eulogy when he passed at 95 years old.
Wow.
When I graduated college, I was offered a really top marketing job, which back in the day would be the equivalent of being offered 125 to 150K now, coming out of
Wow.
college, plus a company car. And he had given the lead to that company, that professor, said, "You want this guy." And so they interviewed me and offered me the job. He called
Wow.
me 2 days later and goes, "I heard they offered you a job." I said, "Yeah, man, I'm so excited. Thank you. He said, No. You're going to Houston. You're going to talk to a friend of mine in the ad agency world." I said, "Why?" He said, "Oh, you need to go talk to him." I said, "Yes, sir." Out of respect, went down there, interviewed with the guy. He also was very old. And he took me around his agency. And I'm thinking, okay, good. We got that done. I can go back to college and wrap up my graduation. I got in his office. He goes, "I'd like to talk to you, son." He said, "It's been a good day." And he said, "Everybody really likes you. And your professor really likes you. So I'd like to offer you a job." Well, I'm a cocky 20-year-old, 21-year-old. I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be a big number. He's got to know what I'm already about to make. This is getting good. And I come live in my hometown. Hell of a deal.
Yeah.
He goes, "Well, I'd like to offer you $10,000 a year, and I'll give you $100 a month to use your car for business."
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, how do I not embarrass myself or my professor? And I said, well, sir. He goes, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, sir, would you give me one night, just one night to think about that?" He said, "I sure will, but don't take any longer." I said, "Yes, sir." I got in my car, drove back. There were no cell phones back then, Paul. Got
Right.
back to my apartment in college, and I called my professor, and I said, "Professor Thompson, can you and I go have a burger and a beer?" He said, "Well, I'd love to." He said, "How'd it go in Houston?" I said, "Let's go have a burger and a beer, and I'll tell you." So we get the burger and beer, and I tell him. And he looked right at me. He said, "Take it." Now, mind you, this guy had consulted with companies all over the world in salesmanship and marketing. He was one of the rare professors that could practice what he was preaching.
Yeah.
He knew business. He was
Wow.
connected in business. He wasn't just an academic. Respect academics, but he wasn't just an academic. He looked at me and he said, "Take it." I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "Take it." I said, "Why, sir?" He said, "Because in 5 years, you'll own your own ad agency. And if you go the other direction, you'll own your own cubicle." I went, "Wow." And he said, "You trust me, don't you?" I said, "With everything I got." He said, "Call the big GTE phone company, thank them for the job, and accept the one for 10 grand a year."
Wow.
I did. And 1 year into that job, I'm at a client Christmas party, and a gentleman who had had significant amounts of Crown Royal that night came up and asked me when I was going to start my own firm, and I was 23 point something. And I said, "Sir, in 5 years, I'm going to do that." He said, "5 years, my ass. I want a pro forma statement in 2 weeks."
Wow.
In 2 weeks, I came back with a performance statement. He invested in me. I bought them all out a year later. 20 years after that, we sold to a conglomerate out of New York, and we're very, very, very blessed.
Wow.
The only way I ever got in that thing in the first place was asking that English professor what the hell Darren Stevens did for Bewitched. What was he doing for Larry Tate and the Tate agency? He was showing ideas.
Wow.
So the point of the thing is twofold. One, on that story, Paul, is you never know where your inspiration is going to come from, no matter what age you are. You just don't know. You don't know what God's got planned. You don't know what that inspiration is. And so I think you seize those inspirations, you seize those moments, and you jump to those windows when they open, and you cling to those open doors, and you don't sit there and watch them shut or close.
Right.
You just don't. And the second one is when you've got somebody close to you that's got a lot of wisdom, man, listen to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard when we're young and cocky and everything else, but you listen to that wisdom because it'll take you places that, again, God's got planned, but you don't. And it's his plan I want to follow. So very fortunate to start my firm and sell it 20 years later. And not that we didn't go through the mountains and the valleys, my friend.
Yeah. Well, and that's amazing that the curiosity of what Darren did in Bewitched led you to your entire future. And I think sometimes people sometimes don't pursue curiosity, or they think about things like, "Oh, that's interesting," and then they just kind of let it go, and they don't spend time with the things that get their attention, the things that that trigger an emotion or a feeling, and they don't spend time with it. And it sounds like for you, it triggered something in you. It's like, that's interesting. And so I'm going to do the next step. I'm going to ask around about it. I'm going to learn more about it. And I think sometimes people don't do that. They don't take time to, when something triggers their attention, when something gets their attention more than maybe something else, they don't think, maybe that's something I need to think about a little longer. Maybe that's something I need to pursue. Maybe that's something I need to ask about. Maybe that's something I need to look up. Yeah.
I think you're right on the money. And I think part of that is gratitude. I'm great. I'm a very grateful person. I didn't grow up wealthy and was always just grateful when something really cool would happen.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was God sent. So when something came my way that wasn't in my playbook, I wanted to know about it because I knew it was probably bigger than me.
Right.
And I think gratitude is at the heart of that curiosity. And that doesn't mean I haven't chased some of those curious moments and gone smack into a steel door either.
Right.
But you know what? You can get up. You can get up when you get knocked down.
Right.
But you can't reclaim open windows and shut doors, and you can't reclaim those. You can miss those all day long.
Right.
I think your observation is right on the money.
Well, yeah, and gratefulness is so powerful because it lets us be a little more content with what we have. It takes away the desire for things that can sometimes be a frustration, can sometimes be a distraction, sometimes be a way to minimize the things that we already have. I think when we're not grateful for our family, when we're not grateful for the things that we have, then we can easily get distracted in a negative way towards pursuing the things that sometimes can actually lead us down away from the things that we should actually be grateful for. And then we realize we should have been grateful for them in the first place.
That is so right. And you know, that your observation, your approach to that just leads me into exactly why my philanthropic knowledge transfer, which is all I'm doing now. I'm not running a firm trying to develop new business. I mean, we're selling the book, hope to pay some expenses on all this traveling and speaking and my podcast, the Brand On Show, the things we're doing to just I'm trying to take 50 years of wins and losses, 50 years of success, of thousands of brand alignment projects with hundreds of clients, large and small, and say, hey, entrepreneurs, hey, you that owns a yoga studio or a coffee shop, or you that owns a mid-sized engineering firm or law firm, let me give you this information, because when I'm gone, it's gone, at least from me. Now, AI will pick up all my blogs, all my writings, and all my everything. Yeah. They don't pick up the stories, and the stories are where the magic lies, because in brand alignment, what you just mentioned about personal living is so true in our best brand alignment projects. When we would get inside of a client and learn what's really going on with every facet of their customer's journey and their branding and how it related and how it aligned or didn't, then we would be, as willing as we were to find Darren Stevens and Bewitched and what that meant, we were willing to challenge those clients, sometimes in very difficult situations, and say, okay, I heard you're 80%. Now tell me the last 20. What are you hiding? Wow. What is your truth? And the reality is, number one, you never do great branding with committee. So I'll go to court with anybody on that one. Great branding is never done by committee. And clients are rarely 100% honest with you. They almost always hold back. And it's for different reasons. Usually they're not trying to be deceitful, even though that's happened a couple of times. Usually they're not trying to be deceitful. They just don't want to uncover the family issues, or whether it's the problems they've got, or whether it was the issue they had 3 years ago, or whether it's how much money they're really making, or where they're really going with their organization, or what is their real commitment, their real vision, their real mission. And so they dance around it, and they want you to do great advertising or great brand stuff or great marketing projects, or make my social blow up, or make me well liked, or get me a lot of hits, a lot of looks, a lot of friends. And that's just not what it's all about. Those are all tools. But until I know the essence of what drives you and your company, I can't get you great branding. I mean, most of my clients that came to me, Paul, over all those years, they didn't come to me because they were failing. Yeah. They came to me because they knew something was missing. They knew they were hitting it 50, 60, 70, sometimes 80%. And they said, wow, if we're making this much money at 70, 75%, 80%, what could we make at 100? Perfect brand alignment, being brand on, getting it lined up at every single phase of the customer journey can get you to that 100%. And it also makes working a lot of fun.
Yeah. Wow. Love that. Well, before we continue about brand alignment, because I want to pull that thread and I want to
Sure.
unravel all that means. I do want to go a little bit back in your history because it sounds like very early on that people were willing to take a chance on you and willing to give you opportunities as a very young man. So what was the thing that they saw in you? What was the superpower that you had at that age that made you stand out to them?
I believe my faith drove my confidence. Obviously, I didn't have enough experience to say, hey, I'm great. I've already proven myself. I want to do this. But I had that kind of spirit and that kind of personality. But it was driven by my faith. And it was driven by my faith that I truly believed that if we worked hard enough, we could do anything they asked us to do within that realm of brand alignment, within that realm of marketing. I truly believed that. And I believed it. And I knew I was backed up by my Savior because he's the guy who put me there in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, I go back to AJ. What's AJ's last name? You interviewed a few podcasts ago.
AJ Brown.
Yeah. AJ was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Obviously he was from I think he was let me look, I wrote it down. AJ Adams.
Adams. Actually, I know it. AJ Brown at church.
A different guy. AJ Adams' father was a minister.
Yeah.
And so he got an unfair start on us on that way. A lot of people don't get that at birth. But his father was a minister, and then he told his story about how he ended up in branding and marketing and how he's aligned those two to create the business model that he's in. And man, I when I put him down from your podcast, when your podcast ran out, I immediately messaged him and said, man, keep doing great things. You are serving our Savior, and you are serving the world, and you're guiding young people to better places. And what a great place to be on your podcast, Paul, and to share that message. He was phenomenal. I highly recommend the guy and what they're doing. And that's what I felt at a young age. And that is that I felt like, hey, the very, very worst that could happen is if I fail, if I go in and I tell a client, you're going to pay me X because I'm going to do this and I'm going to make that happen. And if for some reason I don't put forth the effort or I don't deliver, what's the very worst that's going to happen to me?
Right.
He's going to fire me.
Yeah.
Now, you do that 2 or 3 times, you're out of the industry. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen for a long, long, long time. But part of that was fear of failure. You know, being transparent, as I request my clients to be. Part of that's fear of failure. When your father is a coach, you know, you can give me wins or you can give me excuses, and I don't want your excuses.
Right.
He's one of the winningest high school basketball coaches in the history of the United States. And he had over like 800, 900 wins or something like that. But it's because he didn't accept excuses. And so I went into business with that same intensity. Mm-hmm. And so when someone believed in me, when they put me on the court, when they put a jersey on me, they put the ball in my hands, there was no way I was going to drop the damn thing.
Yeah.
Just no way. I don't care if I worked an extra 20 hours that week or that day on it, which gives me great conflict with today's current silo-driven marketing box checkers that just want to go, okay, I got my task. Don't care how that fits in the picture. I cared how everything we did for them fit in the big picture, how it all aligned with their business strategy and how it made a difference at the end of the day. And my largest client, when he told me one day after we worked for him for 18 years, he goes, you know why I hired you? I said, no, sir. He said, I hired you because once I took it off my desk and put it on yours, I no longer had to worry about it.
Wow.
And if you can instill that kind of confidence in your clientele and then back it up and deliver, you can build something. And you build that in a lot of businesses, not just branding or marketing. But I think that's what drove me, is that the fear of failure.
Yeah. So what was your first success then? When you realized, wow, this is what I love, this is what I do, and I have succeeded. I have done something well.
Wow, that's a great question. Have I ever answered the first success story? Once we opened the firm?
Yeah. Once, I mean, as a young man, as you said, it was all about the wins. When was the first win that you said?
It was funny. So if you think back to being 23, today's college graduates at 22 and 23 are like 1,000 times smarter than we were back then. They really are. They're just exposed to more, and with the internet and everything else. Yeah. So to some of them, this story may sound really hokey, but to guys in my age range and up, they're gonna love it, because when these guys invested in me to start my own firm, they gave me $50,000, a lot of money, in 1980. They gave me $50,000 and said, okay, and we're giving you a line of credit at the bank and go get them. Okay, you're 22 years old. You're a coach's kid. You've never had anything nice in your life, materially. What's the first thing you go buy with $50,000?
Probably a car. Or
Nobody ever misses the answer to that question. Absolutely a car. And the hottest car on the road at the time was a Cadillac Eldorado Barrettes. Oh, man, with the silver stainless half roof. That was 25G. Okay. That was half my deal gone. But, man, I was driving large, baby. I went out. I left that dealership. I thought, shit, what now? I drove over to the office furniture place. I bought the biggest ass desk they made. My desk was as wide as a barge going down the Gulf Coast. You know that in Mississippi. And I'm like, okay, I got a little money left. I went and rented an office. Well, I didn't check to see that my desk would almost go wall to wall.
Oh, wow.
And then I had enough money for a part-time secretary. And I said, here we are, 50 grand's gone. We better get to work. And that fear of failure, again, drove us. But we had that client's business, and we landed 3 more like within 2 weeks. We were just like I worked 20, 22-hour days because fear of failure. And so you land clients and all of a sudden you see their sales grow. And you know, the first time a client says, thank you, great win. We had some fun wins. We got to do some fun deals and trade shows and television commercials. And we had a lot of wins in terms of big wins. And what was that first real victory? I think it was at the 1 year mark when I went to that client that invested in me and I said, gentlemen, I'll never be able to thank you enough. And I tripled their money a year later, gave it back to them and thanked them. And you know, that was the biggest milestone, I believe, early on for me. There was no one single client win because all our clients were winning at that time.
Right. So you had mentioned that you were attracted to the idea of an advertising agency by Bewitched, and you had mentioned that, you know, branding wasn't talked about as much then. It was more about marketing. You know, it was more about advertising and things like that. When did you first learn the difference between marketing and advertising and branding?
Brilliant question. I learned it in school as I dug, because I figured there was a reason that professor told me, and that dean of business told me back in the day that there's something different coming on with marketing. It's more of the science of business as opposed to journalism, which is more of the creative. And I said, but I'm creative. They said, great, but you can deliver that creative with strategy and you'll win. And so I went out in the market with that attitude, and I really wasn't sure, to answer your question, I really wasn't sure all that meant. But I had an idea. But the man that made the difference in my life, that first professor, but then the second guy was another really old guy named Pete Wolf out of San Juan Capistrano, California, where the Swallows go every year. Mm-hmm. And Pete had been all up and down Madison Avenue and run ad agencies, everything for like 50 years. And he had moved to San Juan with his wife in later years and started something called Blood and Guts. And it was an ad agency newsletter for ad agency presidents around the country that talked about the real trends in the industry. And it was real. And it was printed on an old brown stock and it looked like crap. But God, the content was just phenomenal. Yeah.
That's when newsletters actually came in the mail as opposed to
it came in the mail, right. There was no electronic. I would sit back when that would come once a month or every other week, whatever it was, and I would get my coffee out and I'd read that thing cover to cover. Well, one issue a few months in says, I'm going to hold an agency management roundtable. And he was either in Phoenix or Dallas, I don't remember. But what he did was he offered agency CEOs from around the country, from different markets, first shot at joining the roundtable. So there would be 12 to 13 ad agency CEOs, but you couldn't be from a competing market. You couldn't have 2 people out of Mississippi or 2 people out of Texas. So I thought, well, you know what? I need some time away. It's a 3 or 4 day deal. You get to meet the man. He sits at the table with the 12 of you. And you get to talk to peers, people that have the same challenges every day when they wake up, face the same issues of new business and finances and employees. I need to do this. I'm young and I need to learn from all these guys. Yeah. And so I signed up and I went. You have to give them all your financials, confidentiality behind the scenes, because they actually measured them and put them up on the screen and said, Agency A is making $330,000 in profit a year. Agency B is only making $22,000 in profit a year. Agency C is failing. And they literally list them up there. They don't give your name, But by the end of the day, everybody figured out who was who anyway. and we're sharing this stuff. Well, in the very first conference, he said, I want to tell all of you something. He said, the day of agency commissions is going to be gone one day. At the time, Paul, every single agency, every one of them, operated on 15% commission and nothing else. Meaning, you land $1 million account, you're going to make $150,000. They spend $100,000 in media, you're going to get $15,000 of that. You do $200,000 worth of artwork, you're going to keep $30,000 of that. Everything was 15%. That's just the way it was.
Yeah.
It was sidebar story. That was created way, way, way back in the 1700s when a bell ringing pilgrim in the United States up in the colonies went to the town crier newspaper, and he personally came up with the idea of selling advertising. It was his idea.
Wow.
And the paper said, I have no salary for you. I have no monies for you. He said, well, I tell you what, I'll sell it, and I want 15% of all the papers and all the stuff I sell for you. And they said, that's fair. And that's how agency commission started.
Wow.
And stuck for like 200 years. And that makes no business sense whatsoever. Because if I tell a client, I need you to spend $1 million in media or $3 million in media or $5 million in media, if they can look at me and know, okay, dude, you're getting 15% of that, which are you really making a strategic recommendation or a budget recommendation? And so we quit taking agency commissions right away and said, we're getting paid for our time. And by the way, we don't bill by the hour ever. Yeah. Because as you know, being a guru in the business yourself, some of the best stuff you've ever created, Paul, came in the first meeting with the client. Some of the best stuff you ever created came within 60 seconds.
Right.
And you can't get paid by the hour for that.
Right.
So what Pete Wolf professed was, he said, all these agencies go after all this client business on the come. They go in and they go, 3 agencies are coming. It's a cattle call. They're all going to make creative presentations and one wins. Well, they spend $10, $20, $50, $100,000 getting ready for these presentations. Answer me a question, Paul. Who pays for the 2 agencies that lost?
Yeah.
And all their work? Their existing clients. So we came up with a mantra that we do not want our existing clients having to pay the rates of failed business presentations. So we did something that Pete Wolf recommended called a master plan, which is now known as a full-scale marketing plan or brand plan or whatever you want to brand it.
Yeah.
And we charged them up front. And if they said, well, all these other agencies will do one for free, what do you mean you're going to charge 10 grand? We said, well, sir, this is how much we put into it. And here's our deal. If you don't hire us, we're paid. Nobody else pays for it. We'll give you all the knowledge, all the research, all the information. We'll walk away friends. If you do hire us, we'll rebate that money towards your fees. And we won about 90% of the business we went after.
Wow.
Because people appreciated honesty and openness and effort. And it made all the difference in the world. So we were not afraid to charge lump sum fees. We'd go into a client on the front end and say, well, this is a $250,000 fee project. And no matter how much media you buy, no matter how much graphics you do, no matter any of these other things, they're all it cost. We just get our fee. And they loved it.
Wow.
Every now and then we'd have one go, well, y'all don't operate like everybody else. We go, yeah, you're right. And they'd throw us out the door, but that was very, very, very seldom. And that drove us into the upper 10% of profitable firms in the United States. Our profitability numbers, while agencies were taking off 6, 7, 8% by the time net was done, some of them 2 and 3 and 4. We were up at 20 and 25 religiously for 20 straight years, which is why this group bought us. And nobody ever complained about our prices. It was just a different way of billing. It was a different way of believing in yourself and believing in your team. And I wouldn't hire anything but outstanding team members.
Right.
But believing in your team enough to say, we're going to give you the best work and here's the deal. And you're all paid up. And if we recommend you add another $1 million in media, we're not going to get a dime of it, but we're recommending you do another $1 million in media. They'll listen to us. Yeah. So the relationship was a lot closer with our clients. And that really helped make a difference.
Right. And
but
so
Pete Wolf
Wolf
discerned the difference in what is really building strategy and building brand for someone as opposed to doing advertising or just knocking out creative. And he really helped us exponentiate that. And we were using the word brand long before anyone else. Ogilvy was the only other firm in the world that we knew of at the time really pushing brand strategy. And we were kind of doing that together. And brand, in my book, Brand On, there's a chapter on the history of brand. And brand really didn't take off until about 2000. And that's when everybody wanted to graduate in marketing and the internet started booming and brands started getting into textbooks. And that's when it really took off. So we were a solid 10 to 15 years ahead of that stuff.
Wow.
And, it was a joy. We actually rebranded our firm. We were originally named Coleman Coleman. My brother was my creative director, but 10 years into it, we rebranded ourselves Brand Imagination. And again, before the word brand was big, and then we built behind that. And we had a methodology and we had a strategy. And the first, yes, I had graphics people, I had creative people, I had a receptionist, I had a media buyer, typical small agency. Yeah. But I was the first to ever go to Arthur Andersen, go to Accenture, and take their management consulting team and pick top people off of that. And the next 5 hires I made were management consultants.
Wow.
And what's amazing, what's really crazy is I had a friend that was one of the top guys in Deloitte in the Southwest back in the 80s. And we talked one day over a good beer. And he goes, I said, look, you know what you ought to do? You ought to buy us. I said, we're not an ad agency. We do all the stuff they do, but we also are a consultancy, a management consultancy. And that's where all you bean counters are going. He said, yeah, that Accenture just started and Deloitte's thinking about getting into it. Guess who's really the biggest marketing agency out there in the world right now doing stuff? Deloitte Digital. They're so big a marketing agency, it's not even funny. Yeah. But back then it was too early and the bean counters said, we don't want those marketing guys around our offices. But we were blending marketing into management consulting. The accountants ended up blending accounting into management consulting. And when you blend all of those and you're starting to look at the core consistency of an organization and how it moves forward, you become a pretty strong deal. Deloitte Digital is an amazing group now.
Yeah. So when you come to a client, or when you used to come to a client and, you were first talking about branding and they would say, oh, we already have that. We already have that. How did you educate them the difference between the two did they actually have a brand or did they just have some ads?
That's a great question. You're so damn perceptive. And I've seen a lot of it on the internet. I've seen other firms use it today. In these days, here 50 years later, as a positioning statement, is a brand is not a logo. Well, a logo is not a brand. That is so very true. But that's also the opening line I used 50 years ago. I'd go, look, your logo is not your brand. I remember talking in the oil field. I mean, the oil field's got a lot of money. And the oil industry did a lot of industrial B2B marketing, big budgets, big marketing stuff, not the kind of stuff that gets you on the front page like Nike or Starbucks, but the money was good. And so I'm like, I don't care it's not about an ego thing. It's about getting out there and building a business. So we did an awful lot of work in the oil field. And those guys literally in the 80s thought having a logo designed by their daughter and a ball cap in the back of their car and a case of Crown Royal in the trunk to hand to anybody in the oil field at the well or anywhere else that was making buying decisions, and then doing a barbecue or a crawfish boil, that was marketing. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm not throwing rocks at it because I partaked in every one of those sins and enjoyed the hell out of them and love that industry and still love that industry, which has now become much more sophisticated in its marketing, but they still have the Crown Royal, the crawfish boils, the barbecue, and the baseball caps. But back then it was like, dude, your logo is not your brand. And oh, by the way, it's ugly. And it's hard sometimes to sit in front of a guy. I remember being in South Louisiana in front of a guy who was, he had, his gold Rolex was worth more than my entire portfolio. And
wow.
he's we're doing this and they're making drilling tongs. Really exciting, right? Yeah, but they're $250,000 tools. So each, so their ad budget, marketing budget was pretty big. And he says, I want you because I know we can be a lot bigger and better. Okay, well, tell me your story. Well, he telling me the story. By the time he's through with his story, wife named the company, daughter drew the logo, his sales director, his sales manager created the marketing program. I'm like, I'm screwed. It's like when your wife or girlfriend comes in and goes, how do you like my new hairdo? No way to answer that correctly. There is no good answer, period. You got to pretend like you didn't hear it. Well, oh, look at that. And see if you can get away with that because there is no good answer. So there's no good answer to all those things, but we would have to say, well, John, your baby's ugly and you need to change his name and get them to laugh a little bit and then let them throw something at you and then explain why. Yeah. And we did that a lot. We did that an awful lot. I had one client throw me out of a board meeting. It's a big family-run business, multi-gazillion-dollar company. And they had some real issues at the top level. They had 7 family members on different seats in the board, big money. They owned a lot of things, shopping centers, malls, business buildings, retail. They owned a lot. But man, they were so messed up. I mean, messed up. Good people, all in their hearts, good people. But they had people with drug issues. They had people with legal issues. They had this, they had that. And every family member up at the VP level had their own direction for the company. And none of them were singing out of the same hymnal, so they sounded like crap.
Yeah.
And when they all got around the table and you started asking Brandon questions, it just frustrated the hell because you would ask tough questions. Like, why do you do that? Well, don't question me. I own the company. Let me ask again, why do you do that? I don't care that you own the company. I'm trying to get to the bottom of your brand so I can help make you better. And we would get guys that were so enamored with themselves and so non-understanding of what a real true brand alignment is, a real customer journey all the way around, that they would finally look at us and just go, you know what? We don't need this crap. Y'all take your stuff. We'll pay your bill. Y'all go home. I got thrown out of one of those meetings, and my right-hand guy was right there with me. He was a former Accenture guy, brilliant guy. And we walked out the door. He goes, I knew when you put it in that guy's face for the third time, we were done. I said, so did I. He said, Brandon, that's a lot of money. I said, yeah, they'll be back. They'll be back one day. Well, they didn't come back in short order, but 5 years later, I'm at a gas station. I'm filling up my car. And that guy who hated my guts pulls up at the gas pump next to me. And I'm like, I'm about to get shot. This is Texas. I'm about to get shot. And he pulls up and gets the gas. He goes, Brandon Coleman, how in the hell are you? I said, man, I'm good. How are you doing? He goes, do you have a minute? I said, sure. I thought that I was like praying, God, thank you for my life. Take care of my kids, my wife. He goes, I just got to tell you, I'm sorry. I've been wanting to say that to you for 4 years. I said, why? He said, well, 5 years ago, you were an absolute ass in that meeting. But he said, you were right on the money. And when we finally did what you said, our company took off. Wow. He said, I owe you a huge apology. And I've been wanting to give it to you, and I didn't know how to find you. And I'm glad I found you today. Wow. I said, well, thanks and happy holidays. And that was it. And we didn't make too many of them that angry. There were a couple. But it seemed like all of them came back at some point. It's hard to get someone to understand when they're making a lot of money and they've been very successful and they're not really marketing people. They're not really brand strategy experts or business consulting experts. Really, really hard to look them in the face and say, look, y'all are only hitting on about 60% of your cylinders. And I think we can get you to 100 with a major change, but it's right over there sitting in that chair and they're going like, can't touch that chair. Oh, we're going to touch the chair. and we just loved it. And it became a challenge for us. It was fun. Yeah. Because we never did it for self-interest.
Right.
Right. You do it for their good.
Yeah. So when you start working with brand alignment, what is the definition of brand that you use to say this is what a brand is? This is where you're missing the mark on what you're doing. You aren't branding as much as you think you are, because here is the definition, or here is the way I define brand, and here's what you're doing that is not aligned with that.
Well, again, another great question. That's why you're a top pro at this. We define brand. When we started wrapping our arms around it, 81, 82, 83, we kept batting our heads around. They're just not, the only definition that existed around that time was like can of soup, Campbell's, can of soup brand, or name on a brand. That was about the extent of it. Yeah. As we saw what it was doing in business, I want to say we actually defined it 84, 85, maybe. We said, okay, at the end of the day, what are we telling all these people to do? One, we're telling them to make a promise. And that's what every company does. In one way or another, they're making a promise. Whether you make spiral weight drill pipe, whether you sell coffee, whether you sell yoga services, whether you're an influencer, you're making a promise to your clients. And here's my promise to you, whatever it is. Okay. Yeah. Is that enough? Is that a brand? No, it's not a brand. Okay. What has to follow? Well, what has to follow is impeccable delivery. You have to deliver. And is that enough? If I deliver what I promise you, is that enough? Well, you're getting really close. And then if you wrap that whole thing just right, then it's an immaculate relationship between the consumer and between the brand. So we ended up crafting a definition that says a brand is a promise wrapped in a delivery.
Nice. I love
And if
that.
you Google brand, you can find some really long explanation of what a brand is. And they're all within their own rights, correct? And I say that in my book. But a brand is a promise wrapped in a delivery. And that's how we defined it. And,
I
and
love
you
that.
go back on history of brand. And when you read that in my book, the history of brand is really pretty cool. I mean, you start way back with the cavemen, right? And they burn their symbol on something. And you go all the way to the Great West. And I love cowboys. And I love country and western. I love heroes. And those cowboys brand those cattle and they brand those horses. And yeehaw, I love that stuff.
Right.
And then it moves on and it goes on up into, starts crawling into the marketing space. And then by 2000 becomes something real. And, then you get into the art, science, and common sense of brand alignment. And brand alignment is when all those things come together to have your customer expectations, to have your delivery meet your customer expectations. That's brand on.
Yeah.
Brand, that's brand alignment. Brand on, the way we define it and the way we give awards for it, starting in 2025, the way we're going to give awards for it is brand on is you're exceeding customer expectations. You're developing joy and delight and surprise and wow. And those brands, Paul, are so few and far between. And we like to craft people's brands that and encourage them to do that over and beyond. A lot of people go, look, I can't even get brand aligned, much less brand on. I can't get it to where I'm surprising people and delighting them. There's too damn many customers. Too many entrepreneurs want to lay it off as the customer's fault. And I know there's wacky customers, okay? I get that. You got to carve those out. But you also can't use it as an excuse, right? Like my dad said, you can give me victories, you can give me excuses. I want happy customers. I don't want an excuse as to why that customer left unhappy.
Right.
And so brand alignment is doing all those things necessary to make that customer journey come out and to deliver that brand as it was promised, as it was wrapped in that delivery, that we deliver that wrap promise to them at every single customer touch point. Some scientific gurus in the academic marketing world say that's impossible. I say they're wrong because I've seen it happen. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of focus from everyone. That's not just marketing's job. Great brand strategies are not even marketing's job. They need to come from the top.
Yeah.
Now they may need counsel or they may need their right arm marketing or branding person if they're good. If they're not, it just destroys their progress on their brand. But they need that direction from the top, and then they need those guidelines to follow through. But so it's a brand's a promise wrapped in delivery, and brand alignment's making sure that happens. We had a great podcast yesterday about franchising. Franchising is a difficult sphere for some because the franchisee wants to be an entrepreneur, and they can be. They can own their own business. Owning a franchise is your own business, but you're beholden to the model of a brand because you've bought into whoever, and they have a system. And entrepreneurs tend to want to be creative, and you inside of a franchise, you can't be creative within that system. You just can't. You need to be an implementer.
Yeah.
And I was blessed to interview one of the top franchise consultants in the world yesterday, and look forward to it coming out soon. But those people have to implement it. But guess what? Even if they have a big brand, let's say it's Burger King, and they've got all that national advertising, they got the brand, they got the commercials, they got the flames, they got the whole bit. But when someone walks in that store, they've got a national expectation at a local level to deliver on that TV commercial, to deliver on those flames, deliver on that freshness, deliver on everything, have it your way, deliver on all of that. But then if you can do that with delight and surprise, where your people up front are so friendly and so kind and everything's so clean and so right, i.e. Chick-fil-A, perfect every time.
Right.
Number one brand in the franchise world because of that.
Yeah.
So that's all about brand alignment. And it's very difficult on those franchisees because they don't get to control the logo or any of the fun things, but they have to control that delivery. To be a brand is a promise wrapped in delivery. Same in that business.
Yeah, and a franchise would be a box that you get to play in, but they do have things that you can play in that box. There are things that you can do, like you mentioned, the way people are treated, and that comes from you as management, setting a culture in your business, in your franchise that you own. Because I've been to franchises where they're an international hamburger place, and the way it's run is how the management and leadership dictate and how they create the culture within that organization. And you can have a really great franchise burger joint, and you could have one that's just miserable. And that's part of the branding that you do have control of, because branding isn't just
Right.
the logo, the signage outside, the offering on the menu. It's how people are treated, how people feel when they walk in, the cleanliness, your involvement with the community, all of that stuff can play into the brand that you as an entrepreneur would have control of. But yeah, you're right. When you buy a franchise, you're in a box. And so you do have certain things that are limitations. And so when you're approaching a business and working with alignment, getting the brand on, there are certain things that you start looking for in the business that are off, that are not aligned, that are not brand on. What are some of those things that you first tackle with that when you approach a new business?
Yeah, another good question. I think I mentioned earlier, is great branding art, science, or common sense? And it's a bit all three, Paul. But if pushed up against the wall, you can only have one of those. I would take common sense every single time. Okay. I had a recent maxillofacial surgeon who was just a brilliant, brilliant man. Had a business, 3 or 4 locations, doing very well, spending $1 million a month on TV, bringing people in for these whole face smiles. They tear out their whole face, put it in their hole, put it back in, change people's lives. Literally one of the most amazing things I've experienced in almost 70 years of life. It was just like, oh my God. And they do that in a day. And it's real and it's right. There's nothing hokey about it. Wow. And they're just amazing. And they were doing good and making good money, but they were faltering and they stagnated. And they did good over COVID because obviously you're going to have a lot of people watching TV ads during COVID. So their business grew and then it flattened out. And he said, I need help. He said, first thing, I need to hire a chief marketing officer. And he lived in my building, actually, my high rise in Dallas. He said, here's what I'm spending. Here's what I'm doing. It's just, we have so much more potential. So I'm going to hire a chief marketing officer. My marketing guy is not working out. He's okay, but he's not the guy. And I said, well, what are you expecting and why are you going for a CMO? And he had all the reasons, and they were all the wrong reasons. And he said, I've been searching for 2 months. I haven't been able to find one. I said, well, okay. He said, will you help me find one? I said, do you want me to help you find a CMO or do you want me to help you with your business? He said, well, shit, I want you to help me with my business, but get me a CMO first. I said, okay, only way I'll help you with your business is if you let me say you don't need a CMO, because I haven't been in your business, but just from what you've told me, you don't need a CMO. He said, well, you're so smart. What do you think the first thing I need is? I said, well, you need a new name. I'm not changing my name. Their name was Marquis Centers. Yeah, take a second. What does that mean? Marquis.
Yeah, it could mean anything.
Or nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I mean, all I see are a marquee sign up on the theater going, show today, show tonight, Frank Sinatra, whatever. That's a marquee. And I know what marquee means. I mean, I get it. Penultimate, but that's a word most of us never use in the course of a year.
Right.
And if we do, it's once.
Yeah.
And so there's no familiarity. There's no instant ownership. And so the mind has to clear hurdles. Okay, what does that mean? Right. Okay, you explain it. Well, what does that mean? And you got to keep clearing hurdles. Why am I wasting that mind space?
Right.
You only get one mind space with me. Yeah. What am I going to fill it with? Yeah. So I said, Doc, first thing we're going to do is change your name, but then I'm happy to look into your project. And he goes, okay, you put a proposal together for me, but I'm not changing my name. And he's walking out the door and he looks at me and goes, if you come back to me and say, I got to change my name, you better have a damn good reason or I'm going to fire you. I said, done. We convinced them to do a name change. We re-rolled out the brand. And this was just 2 years ago. They're doing 4 times the numbers.
Wow.
They grew trust. And it was it so creative that we won awards and people out of New York and LA came bringing me all the trophies? No. We rebranded them Doctor's Implants. Yeah. Because you know what we learned? The number one thing patients are concerned about on that whole gig of all those commercials you see about new teeth is, who's my doctor? Because none of the commercials were really showing doctors. And most of those implant people don't use real doctor. They use dentists and other things. They don't use maxillofacial surgeons, which is all he uses. So there's a huge difference in quality. And mouth implants are a lot of money. You're talking $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 surgeries, not covered by insurance.
Wow.
People mortgage their homes, they sell their cars because they grew up with drugs or because they grew up with no dental care. They can't smile, they can't look people in the face, they don't go out to dinner. It ruins their lives.
Yeah.
And these people, when they unveil them, they cry and see. We're not here to talk about it, but the point is when I came back to him, we changed their name.
Yeah.
And it was just so obvious, going back to common sense. You asked, how do you know where to start changing the brand? How do you know where to poke the bear and talk to him about it? Well, I knew he needed to change his name. It was too obvious. The obvious is always the obvious. The difference is, Paul, it's harder for the owners of the business to see the obvious because they've been in it for years. They've been in it day in and day out. He said, look, we got the marquee smile. We got marquee everywhere. I said, good, I can erase it. Nope, no sweat, baby. He said, yeah, but it's everything. It's everything I do. I've got a new jet with marquee on it. I said, if you can afford the jet, we can afford new lettering.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and then you go up against it enough that you say, look, I can't help you if we don't change the name. It's too big a roadblock. Yeah. Because if you're in the ultimate chart that changed, it was me showing him, you're hitting at about 50% effectiveness level on your advertising, and you're spending millions a month. If I change your name, I'll get you up in the 90 to 100% effectiveness market. Yeah. And it's done more than that. So you've been in it long enough. You've got the wisdom. You've got the experience. These things just jump. They just jump at you. As you do your research and your homework, they jump at you.
Right. So with alignment or getting a brand on, the first thing is the obvious, but sometimes for the person, for the business owner, it's not the obvious, is the name. What's the next thing that you look at? If they've got a good name, what's the next thing that you look at?
Well, first thing we do is take a walkthrough. And in my book, Brand On, that's what we ask people to do, Paul, is there is a chapter, I think it's down in chapter 7, about aligning your brand. And the first thing I want you to do is take a walkthrough. I actually provide anyone that buys my book, I provide them 2 free tools that have took me, the better part of 50 years to build. One of them is called the Brain Drain. It has 200 questions that I ask at the start of every engagement. Wow. I would say that has a little bit of value. The second thing is a brand walkthrough, brand alignment checklist, where you just literally take the checklist, walk through your business and go, nope. And it's looking at things. Is it clean? You look in your window corners, is it clean? Is your logo on the wall? Is it straight? Do you have it's stuff so elementary you'd laugh. Yeah. But it's stuff most people miss.
Right.
And most people think that. And when you take those 2 documents and you execute the brain drain and the alignment, both of which come free with the book, they're downloads off my website. And you do the walkthrough with that checklist. You literally do the walkthrough. Another story that's included in my book is a real brand alignment walkthrough of a restaurant experience. And when you read it and you realize it lasts 3 to 4 pages, you realize what it takes to truly align a brand in a restaurant. Absolutely. Because there are so many touch points from the moment you park your car to the moment you get back in it and leave. Yeah. Signage, approach, door, temperature, greeting. Just go on and on and on. And there are so many touch points. It drives this restaurant owners crazy, especially the ones in multiple locations. It's just hard to get it right all the time. But you go walk through a client. Like if you said, hey, come walk through my business, I would start and I'd say, Paul, where is the first time someone engages you? Where do they learn about you? Is it on social, on a website? Those things have changed a lot today. Where do they learn about you? Is it always referral? And then I would start there. Okay, what is that perception of that prospective customer of yours at that point in time? And then walk me through everything they see from their eyes. And sometimes I'll engage customers who are real customers, not with the client. I don't take the client with me. Give me 2 or 3 of your customers, let me pay them, and have them walk the journey with me. Okay, you come to the checkout counter. How do they do? Oh, well, Sally's kind of a bitch. She does this and this and this. She sneers, but she takes my check. Well, okay, write that down. Oh, I wish they didn't do that. They do that, and then they do this. Little things that the owner's not going to go ask him because he's afraid to. Right. I'm going to ask him everything. Right. And I'm going to have him take me through that journey. And I'm going to say, show me the highlights. Show me the lowlights. Right. And I'm going to make the highlights bigger and I'm going to make the lowlights go away. Right. But when you do that, you do those 3 things. Okay. Those 2 checklists and that walkthrough, you're 90% there. And if you're going to go work with a great brand strategy guy or a lady, then those documents will provide you an incredible foundation to help that person do what's best for you.
Yeah. That's some powerful head smacks right there, because I think, we get so confused sometimes into thinking that, it's just about the logo, it's just about the visuals. But, what you shared is so right on, because it is the total experience. And you talked about a restaurant, but it's even for any kind of a store, any kind of a office, anything like that. It is a total experience. What's the sounds? What are the smells? What are the interactions like? What are the coming in, the driving in, the signage, the wayfinding into the parking spot,
Yes.
the finding where your business is. All of those things play a part in your brand. It's just not your logo. It's just not your website. It's not just running a Facebook ad and doing social media. If you're in any kind of a physical space, it's all of it.
Well, and
It's
that's a law
everything.
firm included, or a hospital. We deal with
Yeah.
lots of medical facilities,
Yeah.
hospitals, clinics, law firms, accounting firms, all those we had as clients at one point or another. Some of them you don't think of as restaurants or places you go into and pay money and do something and walk out. They're professional service firms. But anything that affects the human senses, any of your national senses of, touch, taste, sight, sound, smell, all that,
Right.
even in a professional service firm, make a difference. It really does. Anywhere from your invoice, the way you. I just did an episode on gratitude on the Brand On show. It's not about stamping thank you on an invoice. Like, hello, everybody does that. That gets no points. I mean, it's better than saying blank you, but I mean, it's
Right.
that's not gratitude. And having a sign hanging in your business, in your lobby that says, "We love our customers." Show me. You don't need to hang a sign up. Just deliver it.
Right.
But genuine gratitude, real stuff. Check gratitude at every point of that checklist. Check gratitude everywhere you go, because it is by far and away the strongest brand strategy that there is. Period.
Yeah.
I don't care what business you're in.
That's so awesome. Well, I do encourage you guys to listen to that podcast episode on gratitude. Well, man, Brandon, this has been amazing. I'm definitely going to be getting your book. If people want to get a hold of you, if people want to get your book, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I really appreciate it. The book's available at all bookstores and Amazon. It's Brand On, The Hidden Power of Brand Alignment. It comes out soon. I know you don't like to date these podcasts, so it comes out soon. So check, but you can pre-order it today. You can pre-order it. As a matter of fact, if you don't mind me bragging for a second, we have already become an Amazon bestseller before it's even released. So I'm very, very honored and grateful for friends and clients and people who have already purchased the book. So it's available to you at any Amazon location, obviously online, and will be at any bookstore soon. My website is Brandon Coleman Jr., BrandonColemanJr.com, and tune into the Brand On Show at any, Apple, Spotify, any of your podcast platforms, and follow us there. We drop every Tuesday morning. We hope and aspire to be like this guy. Lots of followers, lots of people. He does a phenomenal job, as witnessed by today's interview. We could have probably talked 2 or 3 more hours being branding guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love your approach. I love your style, and there need to be more of you.
Well, thank you so much, man. This has been amazing. And I love this phase of your life that you shared about you just want to kind of just give and share all your knowledge and everything. And one of the scriptures that inspires me is when Paul talks about, I want to be poured out. And I'm kind of at that stage in my life now. We're at different ages, but I'm kind of at that point in my life too, is I just want to pour out like everything that I've learned, everything that I've received in all the different topics. And that's why this podcast exists, is just to pour out. I want to be poured out. I don't want to leave this world with stuff in my head.
I think that's awesome. It all goes back to my dad, the coach. He said, you make sure you leave it all out there on the court.
Yeah.
Don't bring any of it back in the locker room.
Yeah. So finally, what's a question or a head smack that you'd love to share that I haven't asked you about?
A question you haven't asked me about. That's a great question in and of itself, my man. That is a really good. A question you haven't asked me about, related to brand alignment or
about anything.
About anything. Wow. It's rare I get caught off guard, but that one just got me stumped, man. You may have to make an edit point on this one. What is a great question? A great question is, a great question you haven't asked me about is, how much were you how much did you enjoy your life, your journey along the way of 50 years of leading a top branding firm?
And how did you?
Due to my faith, I was blessed to keep it real. We had groups along the way that wanted to grow us significantly with locations all over the country and even overseas. Because of our unique approach at the time in the late 80s, 90s, that we were doing brand alignment, we were doing brand strategy, and that we had combined those. We'd taken an ad agency and a management consulting firm and put them together. Had a lot of people that wanted to grow us, but I had three amazing kids. One who is now a big top dog at 42 years old in the hospitality space. He's one of the brilliant marketing minds. Guy's just phenomenal. He's with a venture capital group, and he's also CEO of all the Cotton Patch Cafes across Texas. He was president of TGI Fridays for a while and bailed out of that deal. But he's just a great kid, great human being at 42 years old, amazing guy. I'm blessed to have a son like that. I got my other son, my second son, another amazing human being, was discovered at 12 as a race car driver, ended up driving set a world record at 16 in a 24-hour Daytona, and ended up driving NASCAR for Joe Gibbs Racing. And then my daughter, who's a brilliant, beautiful woman, ended up winning the National Equestrian Championship.
Wow.
Horses over fences, and got a scholarship at A&M and went on to win an NCAA championship and do some cool things. And so I've got three great kids. I was not willing to sacrifice my father time.
Yeah.
That's where I drew the line. I was fortunate. We had a lot of money. We did very, very well. We could have been so much bigger, could have been so much richer, but guess what? With more money, you can't buy anything more. Not what means something. What means something to me is family, it's people, it's your children, it's your community, it's your church, it's your school district, people. I ended up serving as president of our school board, elected official. That took half my time, but we lived life together. I didn't live in an airplane chasing new offices and new clients, occasionally, but not every day. We could have been a lot bigger of a firm, but instead I chose to coach Little League for 18 years. I coached football and basketball. I ran the firm, was president of the school board, and we worked hard and we had a lot of fun. We took clients dove hunting in Mexico and fishing, and we did all kind of stuff. We were engaged with our clients. We learned that the more time we spent with them out of the office, the better job we did for them, because the more secrets we would learn about their business, the more truth and the more honesty we would get, which would allow us to do a much better job. Some of the best campaign concepts I ever had came when we were fishing. And the client said X. And I went, well, you never said that. and he said, well, yeah, but that's kind of deep down inside. I said, well, yeah, that's your new campaign. Wow. And so we were all in. When people, I had 75 friends my wife interviewed on video for my 65th birthday a number of years back. And they said, describe Brandon. The thing that came up a lot was all in. And when I go into something, I was just all in. I was committed. And that, again, goes back to a dad who, you're either all in or he's going to kick your butt. But that all in, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the discipline he provided that drove me to be better, because I didn't get paid for the hours, the extra hours I put in to be great, to be truly great. I didn't get paid for those hours. I got paid to deliver, but the ones that made us great, the ones where we went over and beyond, were because we were committed, because we invested that time in our own. Yeah. But I loved my life. I was very, very fortunate. But my faith is what centers that.
Man, this has been amazing, Brandon. Thank you so much for this. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to getting to know you even more beyond this. But thank you so much for being on today, man.
Hey, I'm honored. And hey, we're doing a book signing tour next year, and we're going to go by Louisiana because Tony Chachere's Creole Seasoning was one of my products I created and campaigns and brands we built. And I promised Buzzy, the great-grandson of Tony himself, that I'd come down to Opelousas, Louisiana, and come down to see him. So that puts me pretty close to where you live.
Yeah, we might need to connect.
And I'm going to try to find a way to swing through Mississippi and see if we can't go grab a lunch together or something, because I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank you, man. Have a great day. Take care.
God bless.
Thank you for joining us on the Head Smack podcast. We've shared some candid stories and life-changing ideas. And now it's your time to act. First, take bold action on just one idea and see how your life can radically change. Secondly, whatever platform you're listening to this on, please rate it, share it, and leave a comment. Let us know where this episode impacted you. I appreciate you giving me your time, and don't forget to join us for our next Misfit Conversation.